Anybody, guys?
Doc,
Sige. Irene?
Article 1159 all about obligation arising from contract have force of law between the contracting parties and should be complied with in good faith.
Very good. Okay, so that was like Article 1159 all about. Now, there are important terminologies which we have discussed last time, right? So these terminologies are of course coming from that article itself. So we have this what we call as contract, right? So what is contract, by the way? How would you define contract?
Ako, Doc.
Yes, Kit, Kyla? You are muted.
Si Bato Malaki to, Doc.
Ay, tumatalaki. Sige, Heidi.
A contract is a meeting of minds between two persons whereby one binds himself with respect to other to give something or to render some service.
Okay, so that is what we call as contract, right? A meeting of two minds between two or more persons whereby one binds himself with respect to the other. Okay, so this binding force, guys, is what we called in the previous discussion. Diba, we were talking about the requisites of an obligation, specifically civil obligations, correct? So this binding force is what we called as what? A juridical tie. Do you remember? So this is the juridical tie, right? So what do you call, how do you define or what do you understand about the binding force?
Doc,
Yes, okay, Kate.
so binding force, Doc, is an obligation arising from contracts and governed primarily by the agreement of two contracting parties.
Okay, so simply guys, do not be confused. So when we talk about binding force, it is simply means the force of law between contracting parties. Again, I'm sorry. Okay, the force of law between contracting parties. Okay, this is somehow like the juridical tie between the contracting parties. It means to say that if someone could not deliver the obligation based on what is stipulated in the contract, it means to say that it is already demandable, no? So because there is a force of law or the binding force between them. So a requirement for a valid contract, very simple. Simply, if that contract is not contrary to law, morals, good customs, public order, and public policy. Okay, so those are what we have discussed in Article 1159. And that contract between two minds or two persons or between two or more persons will be breached if someone or one of the party violated, no? What is or fails to comply what is stipulated in the contract. So that is breach of contract. And when we talk about compliance of good faith, it means to say that simply, no, the two parties will just comply what is in the contract that they have agreed, right? That is compliance in good faith. Performance in accordance with the stipulations or terms of the contract or agreement. So I hope that you understand that article. So may I know if the one which is or who is assigned to report Article 1158 is here?
Yes, Doc, Doc.
Sige day, Alison, kay wala na ba ta ka-discuss ato last time. So could you please start your report day? You can do like share screen. Do you have your PowerPoint already?
Yes, Doc. Ang akong kauban, Doc, kay wala pa naka-online, pero ang amuang report, Doc, kay amora di voice over, kay base niya di siya ka-attend sa klase ba niya, di siya ka-report o papel.
Pero do you have PowerPoint?
Oh,
Sige.
share screen sa nakadakang.
Sige. Go ahead.
Kuan dok, amora siya gi-video dok, among gi ka nang edit sa CapCut ba?
Hindi, no worries. Just share screen po.
Ito dok ka pang di ko kay bang mo share screen o video.
Or you can send a copy to your class Beadle and the class Beadle will send it to our group chat and I will be the one to play.
Ako anang gi kuan dok, ako nang gi-send sa GC dok.
Aday, again, I'm sorry.
Gi-send na ako sa GC dok.
Okay. Sige. I'll play it for a while. I'll open. Class Beadle. So I'll be the one to share screen. Wait. Very good, because you have included here the mission vision. But, okay.
I am Alia Rose Allison. We will discuss the Article 1158. Core values. Sibunga Community College aspires to guide the students so as to mold them into professionals who epitomize the values of self-discipline in establishing good work habits, cultivating knowledge, pushing oneself to continually learn, and keeping positive attitude in all aspects of life. Commitment in governing actions and services, delivering expectations consistently and building and maintaining loyal relationships among colleagues, and compassion in expressing concern for humanity and environment and alleviating someone's difficulty and discomfort. Article 1158. Obligations derived from law are not presumed. Only those expressly determined in this code or in this special law are demandable, and shall be regulated by the precept of the law establishes them, and as to what has not been foreseen by the provision of this book. In short, di ka dapat mag-assume nga naay obligation unless kung gisulti or nakabutang sa law nga naay obligation ngayon ato. Legal obligation. Article 1158 refers to legal obligations or obligations arising from law. They are not presumed because they are considered a burden upon the obligor. They are the exemption, not the rule. To be demandable, they must be clearly set forth in the law, the civil code, or special laws. While the gingon nga code is the civil code and the special law is under Article 1158, special law is replaced to all the other laws not contained in the civil code. Example: an employer has no obligation to furnish free legal assistance to his employees because no law requires this. Diba, perming giingon nga dapat pangalagaan sa employers ang seguridad sa iyang trabahante. Pero sa kana nga senaryo or kani nga specific nga obligation, wa siya explicitly nga naisigutan. A private school has no legal obligation to provide clothing allowance to its teachers because there is no law which imposes this obligation upon schools. But the person who wins money in gambling has the duty to returning his winning to the loser. This obligation is provided by the law.
Thank you for watching.
Good day. I am Jovene Kate E. Abelia.
Okay, so very good. No, so in anira kung panalitan dili ka report guys. No, so in ana lang. So di kan, for example kay dili man makuan dili man sometimes can get in ang mga reporters. So that would be fine. They are just going to submit the video. That's what I am kung ano kanang recommending last time. So very good for these reporters, no? Kaya they have made this creativity to make this video. So very good. Thank you once again. And class Beadles, you can tell your classmates to have this na lang. And then, in fact, we could, we could compile all those article na mga videos. Pwede man gani sa Zoom or mag-video gid mo mismo that you can show your faces in the video. Pwede man na. Then you have also something to read. Very good, no? So that is a very good ano. So Article 1158 is very easy. You have discussed it well, Alison and the rest of your partner. No, I forgot your partner. So simply, no, Article 1158, obligation arising from law are not presumed. Only those expressly determined in the code or in special laws are demandable and shall be regulated by the precepts of the law which establishes them, and as of what has not been foreseen by the provisions of this book. Okay, simple ra gid kaayo. Obligations arising from law are not presumed. Then it is very clear there. Those expressly determined in this code or special laws are the only demandable ones. It means to say that if it is not stipulated, or if there is no law stating that certain obligation, it means to say that there is no obligation at all. No, the reporters are right. So kung walay law nga nag-state ana nga obligation, meaning to say wala kay obligation, no, in short. So, and they shall be governed by the provisions of the law which may have established them, and by those of this subtitle in regard to what has not been prescribed by the said laws. So there is a specific word there in this article, the special law. So what does it mean when we talk about special law? So ganito, reporters. What does it mean when we talk about special law? Apuda, do you know? Reporters, do you remember? Napa si Alison dire? Okay, when we talk about special laws, it refers to all other laws not contained in the civil code. Examples of such laws are corporation code, negotiable instruments, insurance code, national internal revenue code, revised penal code, labor code. So those are special laws. No, these are not included in the civil code. No, so of course, if still stipulated in the special law, appeal na siya sa mga obligations. So kung wala na siya, so wala po na siya gyud. Dili ka makaingon nga na ay ginatawag og obligation. Okay? So that is all about Article 1158. So, yes, anybody? So it means to say, guys, that obligation derived from law must not be presumed. Mean to say, do not be presumed na wala sa balaod niya, mag-presume ka nga naa kay obligation bisag wala. You get it? No, so obligations derived from law are not presumed. Meaning to say, dili ka magbuot-buot nga naa na kay wala na gi-derive, no, walay mga laws nga stating it, no? And only those expressly determined in this code in special laws are demandable and shall be regulated. Again, only those expressly determined in this code, or specifically civil code, or in special laws are demandable. So, and shall be regulated. So, other than that, there is no more obligation. Do you get the point?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So, simply lang guys, Article 1158 refers to legal obligations lang yun, no, or civil obligations arising from the law, okay? Arising from the law. If not in the law, it means to say they are not considered as burden anymore. They're not considered burden na kay there is no law kanang kuan derivations from it. So I hope you got the point, guys, no? So let's proceed to article. So ang example gihatag sa reporters is employer has no obligation to furnish free legal assistance to his employees because no law requires this, and therefore an employee may not recover from his employer the amount he may have paid a lawyer hired by him to recover damages caused to the said employee. No, so and number 2, a private school has no legal obligation to provide clothing allowance to its teachers because there is no law which imposes this obligation upon schools. But a person who wins money in gambling has the duty to return his winnings to the loser. So that is, there is law on that, Article 214, di ba? So murag man muhatag man kus kung nadaugan nga ako amay nadaugan pero na may law ana, balaod man na, no? So what tay mahems because I said Dora Lex said Lex. So the law may be harsh but it is the law. So let's continue with Article 1160. Do you have reporters in 1160? May reporters din.
Excuse me, Dok. Wala pa wala pa nag-online, Dok. Ganihara mi sig pag-upan mi nagkuan.
Do you have partners? Kinsa may partners sa 1160?
Kampanya and Kabardo, Dok.
Sige, Kabardo, do you have already your PowerPoint?
Naa, Dok, pero tuan ni Tere.
Nganong wala man kay kopya? Dapat you have the copy already. Am I recorded or video?
Wala sa Dok.
So asa naman siya karon? Kay malangay man taday if you're going to wait. So dapat they must always be ready.
Wa nag-online.
I said you must have a video on that and then you can send it to your Google, send it to the Google Classroom or send it to the class Beadle so that we can compile the videos. Ato na lang i-CapCut, no? So as one or the first project of this first project, sige, is you have to have it recorded or have it video, tapos sumpay-sumpay na lang ang mga articles. So naka-report na to ang 1150, 1158, sumpayan na lang to sa 1159 o manag-report ang 1159 pero butangi lang tong output para makat na to matapot dito sa 1158 and 1160, no? So na Gian Kabardo?
Wala, Dok.
O sige, kinsa man naa diri ang class Beadle ni Kabardo?
Naa, Dok.
Sige. Well, please take note dai nga wala sila naka-report at this time. Pero napa sila chance to make the video para ma-appeal dito sa kuan kanang tawag ani ato ang CapCut or katong i-compile nga video. So, Article 1160, please take down notes if you have pens and notebooks. Obligations derived from quasi-contract shall be subject to the provisions of Chapter 1, Title 7 of this book. So, when we talk about quasi-contract, we already have talked about that last time. So, who can remember what's the meaning of quasi-contract?
Dok.
Yes, anybody? Yeah, iPhone. Isa nga ni mo, Day. The one who just raised her hand, isa ito nga na ni. Hello? Akin sa ni Glaze, Kihoy, ikaw to?
Ako lang, Dok. Bas Mayor.
Doc.
Okay.
Ay, sige, sige.
Sige. Kinsa ni sa iPhone, di ko kita sa nangan. Sige, Debbie, go ahead.
Wait, sir. Quasi-contract, an obligation of one party to another imposed by law independently of an agreement between the parties.
Okay. Any other answer?
Me, Doc.
Aminyoza.
A quasi-contract is the juridical relation resulting from lawful, voluntary, and unilateral acts by virtue of which the parties become bound to each other to the end that no one will be surely unjustly enriched or benefited at the expense of another. That's all, Doc.
Sige. So we have discussed that quasi-contract last time, no? Like when they arise from lawful, voluntary, and unilateral acts which are enforceable to the end that no one shall be unjustly enriched or benefited at the expense of another. In the sense, these obligations may be considered as arising from law. So, example, katong atong gidiscuss last time, if you were there, the obligation to return money paid by mistake or which is not due. Example, nagpalit siya sa tindahan o niya kanang nasubraan ng sukli. So, wala may contract nilang yun actually. Wala may written contract. So, kaning quasi-contract, dili gid siya kontrata. No, di gid siya ingon contract. Pero, mo nang gitawag siyang quasi-contract kay wala siya contract actually. No? Kaya wala man ay kontrata nga nasubraan imong sukli, imong i-return. Di ba? Wala man ay contract. But kuana na siya sa law na you need to return because ma-benefited man ka ana kung dili nimo iuli o nya dili man nimo gihaguan, right? Do you understand the point? So example po, another example of quasi contract is katong gipakaon nimo ang iro sa imong silingan kay siya wala man siya diha unya mamatay man ang iro nya concern man ka sa iro naa kay responsibility nga naay responsibility ang tag-iya sa iro nga ulian siya sa pilay na gasto niya sa pagpakaon sa iro. Do you get the point? Do you still remember that example?
Yes, Doc.
Okay, that's quasi-contract. Another. You were in the mall, then you see this baby not crying because you pretend or you presume that this baby is gutom, no? So kay gigutom man niya, wala naman niya nakit-an niyang mama mong naghilak siya. So you were trying your best to return the baby to her mother. O niya, gipakaon sa din mo siya at the same time because naghilak man, no? So basin gigutom siya. Now, based on quasi-contract, apuda is the mother of the baby has the responsibility or obligation to return what you have spent for that baby, especially for the gastos that you have spent in returning the baby to her house.
Wala, miss. Ay, dili, Doc.
You mean to say the mother is not obligated to return what has been spent? Anybody can answer? Based on quasi-contract, example, naay naghilak nga bata sa mall, imong ipakaon ang bata, tapos imo po yung giuli ang bata sa ilaha, nag-taxi ka, nag-grab car ka padung sa ilaha, naa by responsibility ang mama nga ulian ka sa imong gasto when you take care of the baby, unya pag giuli pag nimo ang bata sa ilaha. Who can answer, yes or no?
Ako, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Rama.
Depende, Doc.
It's not
Doc.
depending. You are responsible based on quasi-contract lagi. You are responsible kay ma-benefited ka ato nga paghimo sa na-benefited ang mama sa kuan pag-uli sa bata unya dili man na responsibility nimo nga muuli niya didto unta, di man na imo obligation ang paghatag sa bata og pagkaon, di man imo obligation unta ang pag-uli sa bata padung didto sa iyang mama. Do you get the point?
Yes, Doc.
Oh, naa dyan responsibility ang mama to return the money. Kung pilay iyang nagasto. Gihatag na ba akong example nga if gipakaon nimo ang iro sa imong silingan, unya kanang kay wala ka, unya basin mamatay unya ang iro, di ba? So gipakaon na lang nimo ang iro. So naa ba responsibility ang tag-iya sa iro nga muuli sa pilay na gasto sa imong ipakaon sa iro?
Oh, yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Unsa man na based on what?
Quasi-contract.
Quasi-contract. So kaya makagets. Uy, nagsige na ba ya kung balik-balik ani ha? So kung di gid na ako balik-balikon, malimot gid ay mo. So na based on quasi-contract, when they arise from lawful, voluntary, and unilateral acts which are enforceable. So what does it mean when we talk about enforceable? No? So dili gid unta angay kay di man nimo wa may gasugo nimo. Pero you are doing it. Enforceable means to say that unsa may pasabot ang enforceable?
Napugos na lang, Doc.
Pugson jud ka, mapugos jud ka, mapugos jud ka og uli. It's because kay kuan man, it is enforceable by law. To the end that no one shall be unjustly enriched or benefited. Unjustly benefited. So, example, kung so ikaw nga tag-iya sa iro, gipakaon sa imong silingan ang imong iro, you will be unjustly benefited. Di ba? Kay dili man wala lagi ka nanugo sa imong silingan nga pakanon imong iro, pero ang imong iro gipaka wa man namatay. So you are unjustly benefited if dili nimo iuli ang iyang gipakaon. Do you get the point?
Yes, Doc.
Yes,
Doc.
So, example, kung pananglitan, mao to akong example ganiha, nakita man kas bata gahilak, uy gahilak man ning bata. Asa kaya ang mama aniya? Di naman gyud igkita. Naningkamot jud kag maayo, gipakaon mo ang bata, aron di na siya mohilak. Gihatod gyud mo ang bata kay wa man sa may buot sa bata nga mopauli. Imo jud gihatod sa ilaha. So if the mother will not return what you have spent, the mother will be unjustly benefited. That's why it's enforceable. Mapugos gyud siyang uli sa unsay nagasto nimo bisag wa nimo siya sugua. Do you get the point? Based on quasi-contract, okay? So let's ta sa kuan, Article 1160. Obligations derived from quasi-contract shall be subject to the provisions of Chapter 1, Title 17 of this book. So quasi-contract obligations, Article 1160, treats of obligations arising from quasi-contract or contracts implied in law. A quasi-contract is that juridical relation resulting from lawful, voluntary, and unilateral acts by virtue of which the parties become bound to each other to the end that no one will be unjustly enriched or benefited. Okay? It is not properly a contract. That's why I said, murag di man jud contract siya. Wa man jud contract nga proper ani. That's why it is called quasi-contract. Okay? So in contract, there is a meeting of the minds or consent. Mao man ay atong gi-define sa contract. The parties must have deliberately entered into a formal agreement na amana. But in a quasi-contract, there is no consent, but the same is supplied by fiction of law. In other words, the law considers the parties as having entered into a contract, although they have not actually done so, and irrespective of their intention to prevent injustice or to unjust enrichment of a person at the expense of the other. Mao na akong pasabot aning atong Article 1160 nga kung naay responsibility nga nahimo or naay gibuhat ang usa ka party to the benefit of the other party, bisag wala tod siya sugua, but based on quasi-contract, responsible gyud siya nga iuli na niya nga certain responsibility or certain nga obligation. Walay kontrata pero it is based by law nga iuli gyud nimo kay ma-benefited ka. Unya ma-benefited ang usa ka party niya, there is unjust no unlawful sa usa nga party nga unta gibuhat man niya voluntarily, no? Voluntary ko nanugo niya, Dok. Anong naaman koy kuan kanang unsay tawag ano responsibility o because you are benefited man. Di man pud pwede nga the other party walay justice. They can experience injustice because of what she has done or he has done to you. Unya ikay naka-benefit. So dapat walay maka-benefit, dapat patas, no? So, that is in the quasi-contract. Okay. The principal kinds of quasi-contracts are negotiorum gestio and solutio indebeti. So negotiorum gestio is the voluntary management of the property of affairs or another without the knowledge of consent. Mao ni akong example sa katong ang iyang iro gipakaon bisag wala ang tag-iya. So negotiorum gestio na siya, no? Example, X went to Baguio with his family without leaving somebody to look after his house in Manila. While in Baguio, a big fire broke out near the house of X. Through the effort of Y, a neighbor of X, the house was saved from being burned. So Y, however, incurred expenses. So akong Bisayaon, si X ni adtog Baguio. Unya kay na may sunog. Ang balay ni X para ma-prevent nga dili masunog tanan, gi-save ni Y. Pag save ni Y sa balay ni X, nakagasto siya, naa siya nagasto. Akong pangutana, si X na ang responsibility to return the expenses of Y to save his house?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc. Based on quasi-contract, specifically what?
Article 1160.
Okay. Negotiorum gestio. Okay. Article 1160 based on quasi-contract obligation, and that is the principal, the kind of quasi-contract that it refers to is the negotiorum gestio. Okay. So in this case, X has the obligation to reimburse, iuli yun niya ang nagasto ni Y of the said expenses, although he did not actually give his consent to the act of Y in saving his house on the principle of quasi-contract. Let's go to solutio indebeti. Solutio indebeti. I hope you already have the copy sa katong send ako nga picture sa mga libro. Akong gipicturan ang mga topics. Do you have a copy on that? Gihatag ba to sa mga class beadles?
Ihatag na namo nila, Doc.
Sige. So, ang wala nang pakialam, wala na ko'y labot, ana, basta kayo nag-submit na ko. So, solutio indebeti is the juridical relation which is created when something is received when there is no right to demand it. Kanang, murag wala bitay right ka nga mo demand, kay tungod kay, kuan magod siya, kanang, wala ka gasugo, no? So, based on Article 2154, it is based on the principle that no one shall enrich himself unjustly man at the expense of another. So, mao man gini principle sa Article 1160 nga, walay maka-experience og injustice. Wala po'y maka-benefit nga dili dapat fair ang laban. So, that's why you are entitled to reimburse anything. So, the requisites of solutio indebeti, number 1, there is no right to receive the thing delivered. Wala gyud siya right unta nga mo receive sa butang nga i-deliver dapat. Number 2, the thing was delivered through mistake. So, solutio indebeti na siya. So, example, D owes 1,000 pesos to C. If D paid T believing that T was the authorized to receive the payment of C, the obligation to return on the part of T arises. So if D paid 2,000 pesos by mistake, C must return the excess of 1,000. The presumption, Article 1176, however, is that money paid by one to another was due to the latter unless the payer proves otherwise. So imbis ang utang niya usa ka libo, yan nasayop man siya bayad, nahimo man yang 2,000. Naa ba siya right iuli to ang usa ka libo nga sobra? Yes, based on solutio indebeti kay naasayop man siya. No, there is a mistake man. The requisite which is number 2, the thing was delivered through mistake, naa man dito. So iuli jud niya, no? So kani pong nakahuam siya usa ka libo to D, si C nahulam og usa ka libo ni si D nakahulam og usa ka libo to C. Unya dito niya na return ang bayad ni T. Iuli gina ni T ang iyang kwarta kay nasayop man to siya, there is a mistake, no? So iuli gyud to ni T ang kwarta ni D, bulahan mabalik ni D sa owner, tinuod nga owner sa 1,000 which is C. I hope you got it. So very simple guys, I will give you the difference between quasi-contract based on negosyorum gesto. So in negosyorum gesto, wala siya sugua pero kanang unsay tawag ani, gibuhat niya for the benefit of you. So you have the right to return all the expenses nga she has spent. Sa number 2 nga part sa quasi-contract, obligation in quasi-contract sa number 2 nga solusyo in debeti, na ay requisites nga gikinahanglan. First requisite, there is no right to receive the thing delivered. Wala kay katungod nga mudawat anang nasayop og deliver. So kay wala man kay katungod, it is not you have no obligation, or the other party is not obliged to deliver the thing to you. Kay dili man ikaw mo dapat deliveran ana, that thing should be returned to the real owner, no? So another example of quasi-contract guys, no? S na maligya siya og gatas sa kanding. Again, si S is a seller of goat's milk. Then leaves milk at the house of B. Yarang gibilin ang milk sa balay ni B. Each morning, kada buntag gina. So B uses the milk and places the empty bottles on the porch. So B1, after 1 week, si S ang nagtinda sa milk, naningil na sa bayad ni B. Kay gibilin man niya ang milk dito sa tindahan ni B. Si S may tindero, siya may namaligya sa milk. So gibilin niya sa balay ni B. Unya kay sige mo hurot ni B ang milk. Gibilin naman niya ang bottle dito pod sa gibinla ni S. So here, an implied contract is understood to have been entered into by the very acts of S and B. So do wala say kasulatan nga ang B ang bayad ana pero implied, there's an implied contract na bisag dili written. Kay nag-discuss man ta last time ana nga bisag di pa written, unay verbal, nagyapoy contract between that. No, there is obligation and there is an obligor and obligee still in the same koan. Naapad gihapon na ginatawag og prestation. So ang prestation na to ana, ang subject matter, ang bayad sa milk dire. So karon an implied contract is understood to have been entered into by the very acts of S and B, creating an obligation on the part of B to pay the reasonable value of the milk. Sakto? So, otherwise, B would be unjustly benefited by the expense of S. So, quasi-contract na. Kung iyarang giinom ang milk dito, dili siya mubayad, dili na mao. So, there is obligation yun ni B nga mubayad. Ana kay iya na day imnon. So, mabenefited siya mabenefited si B, unya si S, maka-experience og injustice. You get the point, guys? So, bibili niya ang milk dito sa tindahan. Unya, giinom ra ni B ang milk. Ug di niya bayaran si S, naka-benefit si B, nya dayon si S experience injustice. So that is still a quasi-contract. Therefore, B has the obligation to return kung pila jud ang bayad ato nga milk. Do you get the point?
Yes, Doc.
Okay, that's in the case of quasi-contract, okay? So next, let's proceed to last one article, guys. 1162. Is there the reporter na nagkaroon ang reporter ani 1162?
Naado.
Sige, go ahead.
Kim, ikaw share screen.
Sige, sige sa hi. Sige. Okay. Di co-host na tikaw dai.
Kuan tap doc, nag-prepare pa sa PPT doc.
Okay. can also send the copy to your kuanday if dili pa ka-share screen. You can send the copy to the class Beadle and then the class Beadle will send us to our GC and I will play it for you.
Nag-send ko ni Trixie, Doc.
Okay. Saglit. Asa naman to? Okay. Trixie?
Yes, Dok. Nangita pa ko, Dok.
Okay. Ano sa man ni-send di ay?
Kanina, Doc. Ito. Kita na, Trex?
Send na, Dok.
Sige. Okay. So, saglit. Wala. Saglit lang ha. Class Beadle. So I hope you get the point, guys, of quasi-contract. Walay actual contract pero walay actual contract pero si tawag ani. Naay responsibility ang duha. Kay nga naman ang duha ka kuan nato, duha ka gibasihan, walay dapat maka-experience og injustice. Unya wala puy dapat maka-experience og benefit nga dili angayan siya ma-benefited kay wala siya suguah, o di ba? So I'll share screen now. Share screen. Okay. Then this play. Okay. For the benefit of, sige Day. Sige.
So, good morning, Doc. Good morning, classmates. So, we're assigned to report Article 1162, the obligation derived from quasi-delict shall be governed by the provision of Chapter 2, Title 17 of this book and by special law. So under this article, it only focuses on the quasi-delict. And kaning quasi-delict already discussed by Doc pag katong previous nato nga dumit. And what is quasi-delict? So it is an act or omission by one party which causes damage to another party. There is being fault or negligence, but there is no pre-existing contractual relation between the parties. So this means na you're having an obligation due to an act of negligence. And kanang wala siya contract kay sa imong wala man jud ka kahibaw og kanang makakos day kag kanang injury sa imong kadaphag. Then next, Doc. So there are 5 requisites of quasi-delict. First one is omission. The meaning of this is Omission is the action that should be in place in order to have obligation. Then second is negligence. This means nga dapat makita diri ang kadapag sa usa ka tawo. Then third, damage caused to the plaintiff. So this means there should be damage due to the act of negligence. So dapat makita jud ang kanang damage nga nakosa sa kadaphag sa usa ka tawo. Then direct relation of omission being the cause and the damage being the effect. So it means the damage caused should have relation to an act of negligence, and it should be proved that the act of negligence done to a party caused damage. Kay lain sig kaayo nga mo kanang mo take kag obligation to the plaintiff if kanang wala ka nag-cause of damage, ay wala ka nag-cause of damage sa iya niya, kanang wala sa direct relation ang damage sa plaintiff. And the last one is no pre-existing contractual relation between parties. So it means that there is an obligation of quasi-delict when there is no contract or kanang prior nga gikasabutan based sa panghitabo. Okay, like what I've said earlier nga kanang dili man jud maka-create ang usa ka tawo og contract based sa iyahang kadaphag. And next will be the kanang situational example of this quasi-delict, and Kim will explain it further. So, ikaw na, Kim.
Okay. Example. Madungog ra ang tingog.
Clear.
Example. While playing softball with his friends, Marky broke the window glass of Lester, his neighbor. The accident would not have happened if they played a little farther from the house of Lester. The omission there. Oh. There is a doc. The omission there. The omission is an act. So the omission there is playing softball. Softball, nagduwa si Marky ug si Lester. Then sa negligence there is kapabayaan nila, nagbuak nila ang window nilang Lester. Then damage to the plaintiff. O mo na nabuak mo to tungod silang kapabayaan, nabuak ng samin nilang Lester. Then
Okay.
crime distinguished from quasi-delict. Sa crime, criminal or malicious intent or criminal negligence. Then sa quasi-delict, there is only negligence. Sa criminal kay nagyo siya intent jud, malicious intent. Then there is a quasi-contra kanang kapabayaan ra niya na nabuhat niya tong
Very good.
The purpose of sa crime na punishment, then dire kay indemnification of the ordered party. Pagbuot ra sa sa party kung unsay iyahang
Kabayad.
Then affects public interest. Kaning siya dire sa crime. Oy, kung unsa ang gusto sa public, kung unsay panglitan, mo jud niya ang pamlaod, mo jud niya makuan dire kay sa kwasay kay kung unsa rig katong akong gingundang, kung unsa rig atag niya nga pabayron ba niya or unsaon ba niya ang nga kasa. Then general to liabilities, criminal and civil. Then sa atbang kay only civil liability. Saan ka na dire? Next lang ko daw.
Okay, so we were talking about last time about civil liability and criminal liability, di ba? So that is for you to, kuan guys, no, go back to the discussion. Ano sabi yung diferensya ng criminal liability and civil liability? So, sige, Day.
Sa criminal liability, this is kanang makakuan bitaw nga pwede ka ma-priso dire niya. There is a civil liability kanang dili ingon nga mapriso ka dayon kay naa ka ng less rabat ang kanang imuhang
Penalty.
penalty.
Naalang kay tulubagon. You have obligation to deliver. Pero dili gyud ingon nga dagko og penalties, okay? That's it. Now, okay, continue dong.
Then cannot be compromised or settled by parties themselves. Kani ang crime dili ni siya masitol ba ninyo lang agi jud mo judge inana para makuha ninyang pangitabo. Then can be compromised as other civil liability kanang ukat sa pwede ra ninyo mahusay sa inyong sa imong nakuanan nasad-an nga kamo-kamo ra. Then the guilt of the accused must be proved beyond reasonable doubt. Then the fault or negligence of the defendants need only to prove by preponderance or super or greater weight of evidence. Dari dam gay. The guilt of accused must be proved beyond reasonable doubt. Karang ang sa crime dam kinahanglan tinuod nga siya gyud mo naay sa din dere dam kay kung unsa.
Okay. So sa crime, it means to say nga, of course, dapat it must be proven that the accused is really kanang guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Yung ka guilty beyond reasonable, wala ni daghang kuskus balungos guilty na gyud kana, ikaw joy nag-commit sa crime itself. Mingon kag kining sa quasi-delict, ang fault or negligence of the defendants need only to be proved. Mao na ang yarang ang pagkawala lang wala jud nako tuyuan, no, so di gyud nako kuan kana intention. There is no intent, no, in short there is no intent, no, in the quasi-delict. Okay, so napabanin sumpay, last slide na ni. Okay, so I'll go back to the other slide here. So we were talking about quasi-contract ganiha. Kung yung kag quasi-contract, wala jud siya actual contract but na ay requisite. Kinahanglan ang usa ka party dili siya ma-benefited nga wala ray rason nga ma-benefited siya nga wala na niya gi-exertan og effort. Ma-benefited siya nga wala siya ga-exert og effort. So dapat wala na siya. Di pud gusto ang law, ang provision sa law, di pud gusto nga ang usa naka-deliver og responsibility unya di siya mabayran sa kung pilay iyang na-deliver for the purpose of what? Kuan lang, helping, no? Voluntary, no? So, ug buto na unaon once again, walay kontrata, wala ko namugos nga gibuhatan na, pero iyang gibuhat kay voluntarily lang kay para ma-save for the benefit of others. Kay di man pud gusto ang law nga ma-benefited lang ka unya wala kay gibuhat. That's why you have really the obligation to return or reimburse what has been spent. That is in the case of quasi-contract, no? So there are two principal kinds of quasi-contract. One is solutio indebeti and one is negotiorum gestro, no? So I hope you get the point. Let's proceed to the quasi-delict. So ang quasi-delict, wala po ni kontrata siya, unya wala po ibalaod ani nga kung nakasala nagduha siya softball unya ang bula kay napunta sa bintana sa iyang silingan. Wala na kontrata nga dapat ang silingan makademand gikan sa nakasala nga bayran ang iyang bintana nga na buak. Pero bisag walay kontrata, dapat i-return yun sa mga sa other party. Nga naman guys, no? Na may kuan kanang act or omission by one party which causes the damage. So unsa may act or omission of that party, that is to take care. That is to think first nga asa man ta magdula ani oy adto ta sa layo-layo kay makaigo niya ta. So that is the act or omission by one party which causes the damage of the other party. So there is fault or negligence din ha kay nganong na may fault or negligence? Ang fault or negligence during the pita, it is not their intention to buak the window, correct? Dili man nila intention nga bukon ang window. So there is negligence. There is no intent or intention to do it. So kay the intent is absent man dire, this is not a criminal act. Okay?
Yes,
Because of the reason that there is no intent to break the window or the glasses of the neighbor, there is no criminal intent. So that's why it falls on the quasi-delict, no? But there are requisites for a quasi-delict to be done or to be delivered or the obligation to be demanded, no? By the other party. One, omission. Wala sila nag-amping. Number two, negligence. Nagdaphag sila. Wala sila katanaw nga naaday glass nga window. Number three, dapat nag-damage. Bisan pa guys, wala sila nag-take care, nagdaphag sila, pag igo sa softball padung sa window, wala gani mabuak ang window, then there is no obligation. Klaro? So kaya wala may obligation, walay demand si tag-iya sa balay. Nakakuha mo guys? I hope that you're listening to the discussion, no? Really?
Yes, Doc. Yes, Doc.
Direct relation of omission being the cause and the damage being the effect. Sige. Ato ning i-discuss maayo kay wala ni na-get sa reporter. Direct relation of omission being the cause and the damage being the effect. Example, ang bula na igo sa kuan, na igo sa unsay tawag ani guys, kanang window sa silingan. So therefore, ang direct effect ana ang pagkabuak sa window. What if sa sud sa balay giatake ang tag-iya sa balay? Unya, naadi relasyon anang pag-atake og nabuak ang window? Yes or no?
No.
No. Therefore, kung namatay na si tag-iya din na because of the atake, you are not responsible to that because dili man siya related ang pag-igo sa softball sa window ang pag-atake sa tag-iya. Do you get the point, guys? There should be a direct relation of omission being the cause and the damage being the effect. So I hope you get the point. Next, no pre-existing contractual relations between the party. Wala dyan ay kontrata nga. Example, gaduha kong softball. Yan, ingon ko sa yan, ma'am, magbuhat tag contract, ma'am, nga kung nabuak gani imong bildo, ako'y mabayad. There is no need for that contract. But it falls to the quasi-delict. It means to say there is still an obligation of the other party if it causes damage to the other party, though there is no contract. So kani dining dapita guys sa quasi-contract, kuanto negosyo, negosyorum gesto, and the other one is the solutio indebeti. Pero kaning sa quasi-delicts, ang ni kuan ani ni fall ani guys more on the kuan ra gyud ni more on the na requisites dapat. Okay, I hope you get the point diri, no? So while playing softball with his friends, Marky broke the window glass of Lester, his neighbor. The accident would not have happened if they played a little farther from the house of Lester. So ang omission dire, if they have played a little bit farther to the house of Lester, dili unta mabuak ang dildo. That's the omission of the act. Now, the direct damage of this playing of softball is the time when the window is broken. That is the direct act. Then there is omission. There is negligence. Kaya daphag sila. O, diba? So very simple lang na ang quasi-delict. Do you get the point? Ang criminal act, nadyo na intention din na. Criminal liability and civil liability gina. Pero ang quasi-delict, civil liability lang. Ang criminal act, it means to say affects the public interest kay people of the Philippines versus Meltsi, ana. So that is criminal act. But diri sa ginatawag og quasi-delict, kamurang private ana magstorya sa imong nasad-an, no? So gawas lang kumingon siya dili ko. So muna mukiha na si tag-iya kay kuan man kanang unsay tawag ani? Kanang si tawag ana wala man kani deliver sa obligation. But mao na siya case guys, pero bisan pag mukiha siya kay wala man ay kontrata, kuan ra gyud gihapon na kanang settlement ra gyud gihapon ang mahitabuan na bisan pag moadto siya sa barangay. Okay? So naka-gets mo guys sa difference between quasi contract and quasi dilex nga mga obligations?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Sige, I hope that you really get that, no? So, we already have kuan kanang 1160 man to si kuan, no? 1162 si itong last Allison ba to? Okay. So karon guys, let's end our discussion and then just wait for the activity to be given sa inyong Google Classroom for these specific articles. So, next reporters is from Article 1163 to Article 1178. Do you get my point? So, dapat inig next meeting, kay Friday man ta karon, inig Lunes, dapat ang ilang mga tawag ani report, pwede man sa PowerPoint, pwede sila magbasa sa PowerPoint, pero gihimo sa article.
Doc, excuse, Doc.